You're a donut! You're so stupid! You're so stupid! You're stupid! Dumb!
So a few months ago, towards the end of last year, there was this pesky little deck going around in Duel Links that had been around for what felt like literally an eternity. Thunder Dragon. This deck had been the top tiers of the game for far too long, so Konami decided, back when they actually, did ban lists that actually banned cards, this deck was up for a hit, and the first card in the firing line was Aloof Lupine, being placed at limited to 2. This meant that it could only be played with Gold SARCOPHAGUS, which was another popular card in the Thunder Dragon decklist. Now there was a couple of small issues with this nerf. First of all, it actually ended up doing nothing, and Thunder Dragon still required further hits later on to finally get rid of it. But secondly, and most importantly for this video, there was actually one other deck in the game that used Gold Sarc in combination with Lupine. That's right, Metaphys was indirectly hit. This meant that for the last few months, Metaphys, which was already considered a pretty weak deck, was left in a pretty abysmal state, with significantly less openness for the deck to be able to function. Well, that was until this latest box. So here's the deck list. Now before I go through the list, just a reminder that if you're enjoying any of the content you are watching or find any of it useful, to please drop a like on the video down below and consider subscribing to the channel whilst you're down there. I make a buttload of content on Duel Links and Master Duel, including free-to-play builds, meta stuff, memes, guides, basically everything, so if you're interested in any of that stuff, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. Alright, so with the introduction of the latest box, there came a small wave of Metaphys support. Unfortunately, it wasn't all the Metaphys support we could have gotten, most notably we didn't actually get the deck's Tuner monster, despite Konami actually releasing the Metaphys Synchro monster, but they did give us a very important trap card for the archetype that has given this deck a new way to get itself started. Metaphys Ascension. Discard one Metaphys card, draw one card, then you can banish a Metaphys monster straight from the deck. If this card is banished, you can search for any Metaphys card straight from the deck and add it to hand. So now on top of Lupine and the deck's spell card with a name I still struggle to pronounce, the deck now has yet another additional starter it can use to start activating its various banishing effects. On top of that, because it is a trap card, it now means you can activate banishing effects during your opponent's turn to proc dimensions whenever you like, to banish your opponent's stuff. It also combos pretty well with the continuous spell, since you can make your opponent change the battle position of their monsters before the battle phase. Unfortunately though, as it is a trap card, it is still a little slow when you're forced to go second, where a slate like Lupine can set up a board wiping Daedalus for the following turn. This card is required to be set first, delaying the same kind of combo by a singular turn. As for the rest of the deck list, it's just your stock standard Metaphys stuff that's been in the game for years now, so I won't bother going through any of that until the gameplay. We are using the skill Grit, since the deck really does need the extra protection if you don't manage to draw yourself a Veil, and since the deck only actually does one special summon a turn anyway, the limitations of Grit doesn't actually affect this deck at all. Alright guys, that's going to do it for the deck list portion of the video. The rest of the video will be gameplay with commentary showcasing the list in action. Remember, if you're enjoying the video or finding any of the content useful, to please drop a like on the video down below and consider subscribing to the channel whilst you're down there. Enjoy the gameplay. Alright, let's get into it. So I'm going to be completely honest here, I don't actually think Metaphys is that good of a deck. I think the deck is still good enough to climb with if you feel like it. I know with this particular version of the deck list, out of the 10 games I played, I won 6 of them, which isn't a terrible win rate by any means, and it did give me a rank up. I know it's only in Platinum, but the season reset literally yesterday, so all these people are mostly Legend players at least. So it is good enough to climb with. It'll just take you a lot longer to climb than your standard like top tier or even top row kind of level deck. I don't think Metaphys got that much of an upgrade, since swapping this out for Gold Sarc would have relatively similar impact, and since Gold Sarc got removed, this is basically just a replacement for it. So I think it's more of like a band-aid fix for Metaphys rather than like something that's going to push them to the next level. But like I said, the deck is still going to be a fairly easy deck to climb with. It'll just take you a little while to do so compared to some of the other more top tier stuff. And the deck is still a really fun deck, don't get me wrong. If you enjoy the playstyle of Metaphys, which is kind of a bit of a slower one, there's no OTKing involved, at least not for... It requires a bit of a setup, because you have to try to banish your monsters first, shuffle some cards in. Well, you'll see in the gameplay if you haven't seen it before, but you get what I mean. If you enjoy the playstyle of Metaphys, this kind of new trap card has revived the deck entirely to a point where it's actually playable again, whereas before it just wasn't playable. Alright, let's get into the replays. So I reckon this guy was... I'm not sure if this is the Harpy player or the guy that just said a billion back row. Alright, so first things first, we're going to activate our continuous spell, which lets us banish one of our Metaphys cards in hand to draw a card. Banishing Ascension, which when banished, searches for a monster card. Or any Metaphys card for that matter. We search for Dimensions. Lupine going to banish ourselves the Daedalus, which will banish a card during my opponent's starting phase. And this card, which will also banish a card... Oh, sorry, we'll search for a card for my deck during my opponent's starting phase too. Oh, standby phase, sorry. I should really use proper terms. So during his standby phase, we're going to banish Tyrant Dragon, which then during my standby phase, will special summon a Metaphys monster from hand, which will be the Metaphys monster we're going to search with Nephthys. This deck can be kind of confusing if you've never played Metaphys before, but don't worry, it's not actually that confusing. It looks a bit confusing. Alright, so my opponent summoned a monster. First thing we're going to do is activate our Metaphys Ascension, which discards a card from hand to banish a Metaphys from deck. This will activate our Metaphys Dimensions, which is a continuous spell, or continuous trap. Whenever a Metaphys card is banished, you can banish something your opponent controls. Which basically just ends our opponent's turn, because Harpies generally need a monster on board to actually play the game anyway. Then during my standby phase, we're going to be special summoning ourselves a Metaphys Tyrant Dragon using the effect of the banished Metaphys Tyrant. This card, when summoned by a Metaphys monster, is unaffected by trap effects, and also gets a double hit against monsters. I'm going to use this card to banish a card to activate our dimensions again. Our opponent tries to use the Karma card on the unaffected by a trap effect Tyrant Dragon. Big, huge brain. God, I love playing Duel Links, coming back to the people that don't read card effects, it's brilliant. Not that I can blame, there's like no time in this game to even read cards anyway, so can't really blame him for that one. Alright, game 2. So hopefully, I know it does sound pretty confusing, and hopefully though, as you see more of these replays, you'll kind of get more familiar to how it works. Mostly just banishing stuff, and then during the next standby phase, a bunch of effects are activating. Alright. So not a bad starting hand. Generally, the perfect starting hands for this deck is any one where you get Lupine and a Thunder Dragon, and a Metaphys card in hand. Lupine is by far the best starter in the deck, as it banishes 2 of your monster's effects, so you can use them both during the standby phase. Daedalus banishing a monster, and Nephthys searching for a card. This player was obviously playing Harpy, and we have got about 2 Battling Box of Veils in hand, so we're not too scared about dying here. But as you can see, because this deck does a lot of delaying in terms of how it gets its combos off to remove stuff and whatever, it's pretty obvious why we're using Grit and using cards like Battling Box of Veil, because we just kind of left completely open on turn 1. Even going second, we just left completely open to be just slaughtered. So this deck is very reactive, not proactive, so it requires your opponent to kind of do stuff for you to then remove, rather than the other way around. It does definitely require things like Veil and Grit to keep you safe. Special Summoning Daedalus, which banishes all special summon monsters on board. Fortunately, he has a Book of Moon, so he keeps himself alive. We're just setting up the same combo as we just did, so even if he does have a special summon, it won't do a whole lot. Tyrant Dragon, summoning back the Daedalus. And we're even going to do an Xyz summon into our Dark Rebellion Dragon, which is lethal on its own, even if my opponent has removal for the Daedalus. Alright, game number 3. Alright, I think this was the Lunalight player actually that was using the Utopia skill, but this deck actually has a really good win rate into a Lunalight. It's one of the deck's main counters. Lunalight hates hand traps. They get so annoyed by it. So if you open a Veil, perfect. The deck is just completely doomed. They do have a counter to Grit though, being they did the little bit of 100-point damage before they do their attack with their fusion monster. So they can get around Grit a bit, but other than that, you also have a non-target banish removal source, which can make it pretty hard for their big Untitled boss monster to do anything. White Rabbit, signing back Butterfly, summoning out Cat Dancer, doing a whole bunch of other stuff, which eventually leads to the same standard Lunalight combo of Cat Dancer, tribute a monster, reduce attack to 0, try to hit twice. But thankfully, we got Veil in hand. And so no OTKs for you. And we've already set up the Tyrant Dragon banished with the Daedalus in hand to special summon and completely remove his entire board. And thankfully again we top decked a Lupine, so we have exact lethal on board to just kind of, you know, finish the job. Alright, next game. Alright, so using the new character, I don't remember if this guy was actually playing trains or not, I forget. Alright, so once again, Lupine banishing Nephthys, banishing Daedalus, and during his turn, banishing, searching. Same combo as before, just setting up so we have a Tyrant Dragon and a Daedalus in hand. So there are other ways you can kind of set up this deck that kind of delays this. You don't necessarily have to go for the setup for Daedalus on the following turn, because you don't know your opponent's going to set up straight into this anyway. But let's be honest, people in Duel Links don't read anyway, so everyone's going to play into this. No one reads what this card does, and no one knows what it does. It's like a 1500-year-old deck, so I'm quite happy just setting up this combo. I know there's other ways you can play the deck that kind of like delays it for an extra turn to make sure your opponent actually summons something, or just in case your opponent sets up some back row and you may need the Nephthys effect to remove back row. But I think it's just better just to set up this starting hand. Most people special summon, and most people don't know what these cards do anyway. I know it was actually a Harvey player. Oh yeah, this is the interesting Harvey player that popped my dimensions, then popped his own floodgate trap hole? Huh? Either way, interesting play by this fella. Then he decided to just pop his own hunting ground anyway. And also give me a Lupine back in hand, which is rather nice of him. I like getting free banishes. Alright, so Daedalus, special summon, banishing the Harpy. And there's lethal on board. Alright, final game. Now this gameplay I actually remember. It's nothing too special at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure I just played pretty poorly for it. But there was one particular moment I want to showcase, so I thought I'd better keep it in here anyway. So this is against a Vendra deck, I believe. I think it was Vendra. Oh no, it wasn't, it was... Oh god, that sounds so stupid after me saying I remembered this. Alright. It was a Necros deck. Alright, so he summons a Trishula. Then tries to go to the battle phase. And during the battle phase, we can activate our Metaphys Ascension, so banish a card straight from the deck, which will activate our Continuous spell, which is basically the combo I wanted to showcase. These two cards do synergize well with each other, so you don't necessarily have to rely on Grit or having a Veil in hand to protect yourself if you happen to open this combo. I think though I actually had this in opening hand, so I probably could have just banished one of these trap cards for a search, but anyway, we'll just ignore that for now. I don't think this is even correct. I think I banished to set up the, during his turn banish, so I've banished my Tyrant, added Daedalus, Tyrant goes off, we can then special summon the Daedalus, banish his monster, but I feel like I probably could just waited a turn here. I feel like I was pretty safe with the, another Ascension on board, we even had Grit still active, so I probably could have waited a turn, let him set up some stuff, rather than just kind of going straight into this. But anyway, I'm pretty sure this card even banishes stuff? Yeah, it actually banishes your opponent's stuff, so I could just set it up so my hand had specifically like a Metaphys monster in hand, or this trap card in hand. I just got a free search off of this dude's effect, because he has another one in hand we saw him search for. Either way, none of that matters, because I just banished his monster and he conceded. But anyway. Alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed these replays. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Laters.
Hey, big brother, can I watch SpongeBob?
Shut up, Mokuba. I'm busy flagging YouTube videos to compensate for the fact that I have an extremely small penis.
Oh.